Have you ever found yourself just thinking, maybe late at night, or when things get tough, about that really big question? Who are you? And, well, why are you even here?
It's probably the most fundamental question we ask, isn't it? And that's exactly what we're going to explore today, this whole concept of identity.
Yeah, not just what our identity might be, but maybe even peeling back a layer.
Yeah.
Like, why do we ask that question so
Yeah,
much?
precisely. And for this deep dive, we're drawing insights from a specific source. It's excerpts from a sermon called Identity, Living in the Light of Who You Are.
Right. This was given by Stephen Wilhoit at Dwell City Church, and it's based on Genesis chapter 1. And just a quick note for you listening, our aim here, as always, is to really unpack the ideas from this specific sermon, giving you its perspective on identity. We're not endorsing a particular view ourselves, just exploring what the source says.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating place to start. Will Hoyt actually kicks off by talking about military ID badges.
Yeah.
Yeah, how they clearly state, who you are, your job, your purpose. He kind of suggests that's a clarity we often wish we had in life generally.
That makes a lot of sense, that
Yeah.
feeling of wanting definition. And he points out, right, that this question, who are you, it's not just for soldiers. It hits everyone.
Exactly. And he highlights two times in life when it seems to come up most intensely.
Okay.
Well, first, the teenage years. As kids are getting ready to leave home, they start grappling with, who am I really, apart from their family?
Right. Where do I fit? That whole thing.
Finding their place in the big story of life.
And then the second time he mentions is kind of surprising, maybe. Midlife, around the 40s.
Yeah, he suggests that often by then people have tasted what the world has to offer, career stuff, experiences.
And found it maybe wasn't enough.
Exactly. That feeling that the worldly things don't quite satisfy that deeper itch. It's not just about needing more, bigger, faster. There's something else missing.
But here's where the sermon takes maybe a challenging turn. It asks why we even ask these questions.
Right. It's not just presented as normal human curiosity. The sermon's answer is pretty direct. It argues it's because of what it calls sin or rebellion against God.
Okay, that's a significant point. How does the sermon connect? Asking about identity to sin. What's the logic there, especially with Adam and Eve?
Well, the idea presented is that before the fall, Adam and Eve simply knew who they were. They weren't walking around asking, who am I? What's my purpose?
So the asking itself is a symptom.
From this perspective, yes. The sermon suggests that this disconnect from our original design, from God, has clouded our understanding. So grappling with who am I is seen as a consequence of that deeper spiritual condition.
And that leads us right into the main thrust of the sermon, the guiding principle for this whole discussion.
Which is to live in the light of your identity.
Okay, so if that's the goal, living in the light of who we truly are, how does this sermon suggest we find that identity? It starts, naturally, right at the beginning, Genesis 1, in the beginning.
Yeah, and Wilhoit makes an interesting point right there about the phrase, a beginning.
How so?
He contrasts it with, say, cyclical worldviews you might find in some Eastern philosophies where things just repeat. Genesis presents a story with a starting point, which implies it's going somewhere. Progress, development.
A narrative arc.
Exactly. And this idea of transformation, the sermon argues, is key to understanding God's nature itself.
Which brings up that question.
Yeah.
Why did God start with the earth being without form and void, dark and empty? It seems like an odd starting point.
Right. But the sermon's answer is quite profound. It suggests God actually delights in bringing about transformation.
So he intentionally set up the raw materials.
From this viewpoint, yes, because his nature is to bring order from chaos, light from darkness. He enjoys the process of development.
Okay, so how does this transformation happen in Genesis 1?
Through speech, divine speech, God said. You hear that refrain over and over.
It's not just thinking it, it's speaking it into existence.
Precisely. And the sermon connects this very powerfully to the Trinity, the idea of God as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
How does that work in creation?
Well, the explanation given is the Father speaks the command, the Son, who John's Gospel calls the Word, is the agent, the means through which it happens, and the Spirit.
The one hovering over the waters.
Yes. described as brooding, or, and I like this analogy Wilhoit uses, like a baseball player locked and loaded,
Ready to execute.
ready to make it happen the moment the word is given. So the principle derived is the Father always acts through the Son in or by the Spirit.
Ah, so there's an inherent order even in the act of creation.
Yes, which means the transformation isn't random. It's an ordered transformation, bringing structure out of the initial chaos, reflecting God's own nature.
And another really interesting observation from the sermon is about God's evaluation. After each stage, it says, God saw that it was good, not just at the end.
Exactly. Wilhoit emphasizes that it's not just the final product that's good, but the progress, each step along the way.
Which, the sermon suggests, applies to us too, our own growth.
That every bit of progress in our, spiritual lives has value in itself. It's considered good.
That's encouraging. Okay, so stepping back, looking at the 6 days overall, so he names the realms, but not the inhabitants. Why?
Instead, the sermon points out, he gives them, especially humanity, a measure of delegated dominion, a shared authority, a stewardship role.
Which brings us squarely to Genesis 1.26, that pivotal moment.
Yes. Let us make man in our image after our likeness.
Wilhoit really zooms in on that shift in language, doesn't he? From let there be to let us make.
He does. He argues it signals a kind of divine counsel, a consultation within the Trinity. Something incredibly significant is about to happen.
The creation of humanity.
Yeah.
So what does it mean, according to this sermon, to be made in God's image?
It means we are created as living and breathing images, designed to represent God to the rest of creation.
Right,
He uses the analogy of ancient kings placing statues of themselves around their kingdom.
to show this is my territory, I rule here.
Exactly. We are meant to be those living statues, filling the earth, reflecting his rule, his character.
And we're given specific delegated dominion, right? Over fish, birds, livestock.
Yes, over all the earth. The idea is to cultivate, to bring God's order and harmony into creation.
That's where the problem comes in, according to the sermon.
Right. Here's the challenge presented. Instead of reflecting God's order, we often, as Wilhoit puts it, insert chaos.
Insert chaos. What does that look like? And how does that circle back to the identity question?
Well, the sermon suggests we bring things like hostility, animosity, gossip, slander, confusion where there should be order, and this corruption, this insertion of chaos.
It messes things up.
It fundamentally darkens our minds, our eyes, obscures that original design. And that, the sermon argues, is what leads us directly back to asking, who am I? Why am I here?
We've lost sight of the original blueprint.
Okay, this is deep. But then the sermon offers this really quite profound idea, a story within a story.
This is fascinating. What if, Wilhoit asks, this whole journey, the fall into sin, the redemption out of it, isn't just a rescue mission?
Meaning, more than just getting back to square one. Exactly. What if, through that very experience of falling and being redeemed, humans can actually be transformed into an even greater image of God?
Wow. So the struggle itself becomes part of a deeper transformation. How would that make us a greater image?
Well, the idea is that redemption allows us to understand and reflect facets of God's own heart that perhaps wouldn't have been as fully revealed otherwise.
Like what kind of facets?
Things like his mercy, graciousness, forgiveness, self-sacrifice, his incredible patience, long-suffering.
Things you only truly see in the face of failure and brokenness.
Yeah, precisely. So, from this perspective, experiencing redemption allows for an even better reflection of God's complete nature, including these incredibly deep attributes.
That's a powerful reframing. Okay, let's shift to the third key aspect of identity the sermon explores, being an agent of community.
Right. This starts with God's own nature. As the Trinity, Father, Son, Spirit, God is described as intrinsically other-oriented, there's a constant flow of love and giving within God himself. The Father loves the Son loves the Father. It's not solitary, it's relational at its core. And we, as his images, are meant to reflect that.
And that connects back to let us make man.
Yes, and specifically Genesis 1.27, male and female he created them. The sermon emphasizes that the image we reflect isn't solitary. It's in us.
A community reflecting a community.
And Wilhoit describes how God draws us into community with himself. He talks about a full circle transformation. Father sends Son, Son and Father sends Spirit. Spirit comes into us, transforms us into the Son's image, all ultimately for the Father's glory.
Leading to union with God.
Union and communion, yes. But it's not just community with God.
It's with each other, too.
Exactly. And the sermon raises a really thought-provoking question here. Why start humanity with just two people, Adam and Eve, to multiply and fill the earth.
Yeah, if the goal was just population, surely creating billions instantly would be more efficient.
That's the point Wilhoit makes. If it was just about numbers, that would make sense. But the sermon suggests the reason for starting with 2 is deeper.
Okay, what's the suggested reason?
It helps us see our common bond, our shared origin, all tracing back to the same first parents.
Ah, so it creates an inherent link between all people.
Yes, it fosters a communal bond, a sense of shared story, and even a dependency that we have on one another.
Which encourages us to what?
To seek this collective good, to be other-oriented, just like God himself is other-oriented. It builds community into our very foundation.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together as we wrap up this deep dive. We've explored identity through the lens of this sermon by Stephen Wilhoit, based on Genesis 1. 3 key aspects really stand out. First, our identity as an agent of transformation. We're meant to be transformed by God's Spirit and, in turn, reflect his progressive ordering work in the world.
Second, we're agents of reflection, created to mirror God's character and maybe even more profoundly through redemption, reflecting his mercy, grace, patience, the whole picture.
Right. And third, we're agents of community, designed to be other-oriented, reflecting the Trinitarian community, fostering connection with God, and, crucially, with one another.
Yeah, those are the core threads. So if the sermon's premise holds that asking, who am I, stems from a disconnect from this true identity, well, here's something to really chew on.
Okay.
What practical things could you do day to day to lean into living more fully as that agent of transformation, reflection, and community that this source describes?
And how might really embracing that view change the kinds of questions you even ask about yourself, about your purpose, about the world?
It's definitely something to think about. How does living from that identity change the search for identity?